we're in the midst of a fun recession right now. I don't think 99% of adults are coming close to having an appropriate amount of fun. I want to travel the world with my spouse. And I would say, great. When was the last time you two went out on a date? 75% of the time, they would look at each other and not have a good answer. The amount he needs to save goes down by 96% from $2,400 a month to $110 a month. Once your kid goes off to college, you've already spent 93% of the time that you're going to spend with them over the course of your life. What if there's like a company 30 years from now that invented a time machine and they're going to allow me to go back in time to have one nighttime snuggle with the 10-year-old version of my kid? I'd write a check for $50,000 to have that opportunity.
Derek, you wrote this book that is basically challenging the modern idea of what retirement is. What is like the traditional way that people look at retirement versus the way that you look at it?
Yeah, so I think that the way most people look at retirement, it's this idea that, first of all, you're going to be happier in the future than you are right now is sort of the buy-in, that you're supposed to be making some sacrifices now, usually to things like your health, your happiness, your key relationships, in the name of saving enough money to be able to stop working at some point to then be able to enjoy those things. And while I think something like, depending on where you get your information from, 50% of people in the United States don't have anything at all saved for retirement, like that they are not my target audience. They need to read a different book and they need to think about saving some money. My audience are the people that have bought into this idea without really thinking too much about it. They're just going along with it. And I want to help them realize a couple of things. One, if they hate their job and they don't like what they're doing, then I'm sure when they get to a place and they don't have to do it any longer, it's going to feel good for a short period of time. But not doing anything at all for 20, 30 plus years is not the key to lasting happiness. And once you realize you're going to be potentially working longer than maybe what you were thinking, that means you have more money right now because you don't have to save as much that you get to spend on the people and things that are most important to you. So I want to take the idea of save and sacrifice now to all of a sudden be able to do all these things in the future and say, let's try to have a more integrated approach where maybe we'll work a little bit longer and that frees us up to being able to live a little bit more in the present.
So how did you start to look at it differently? Because I mean, like I said, everybody kind of looks at it that way. It's like, hey, I'm going to save for retirement. And then when I retire, I'm going to travel and I'm going to do all these things. So what made you kind of look at it from a completely different perspective?
Yeah, I've been a financial advisor since 1998, and very early in my career, I was just seeing people who were buying into this concept. And when most people, if they meet with a financial advisor, the financial advisor doesn't say, do you want to retire? The financial advisor says, what age do you want to retire? People are automatically opted into this thing without really giving it a whole lot of thought. And I was seeing people that were not fulfilled, were not happy in the present because they were feeling the pressures and the stress of having to save a certain amount of money to hit their quote unquote number. And at the same time, I was seeing people who were getting there and looking around and saying, this isn't really what I thought it was going to be. The relationship that they had with their significant other was strained because they weren't investing in that. They weren't spending time together along the way. Their relationship with their kids and their grandchildren wasn't what they thought it was going to be. And they didn't have the health to enjoy all of the activities that they thought they were going to be able to do. Very few people were coming into my office with their hand raised, knowing that they didn't want to retire. I was sort of planting the seed. I was bringing a unique perspective to the table, and I would ask these prospective clients when I was first meeting them questions like, "What do you want to do when you retire?" And they would say things like, "I want to travel the world with my spouse." And I would say, "Great. When was the last time you two went out on a date?" And 75% of the time they would look at each other and not have a good answer, or they would say, "I want to play golf 5 days a week," but they haven't played golf in 3 years. They don't go to the gym, and they just had their hip replaced. So when is all this going to happen? So I was beginning to see that it was really not giving people the lives they wanted now, and it was probably not going to give people the lives that they wanted in the future.
All right. So you're seeing this obviously from this financial perspective, right? How do you start to advise some of these clients that you're working with, or just, people in your network as to like, okay, how do we make things better now? And how do we maybe work a little bit longer? And what do we do? Because, everybody's in these probably kind of high stress type jobs. So how does somebody, leave that high stress job, but still continue to earn an income after, they exit from whatever that big high level position that they have?
Yeah, look, I think again, like if somebody has a job that is just sucking their soul and it's draining them, I don't want them to do that any longer than they have to. And I think using the knowledge that maybe if I found something that was less stressful, if I found something that was more enjoyable, then yeah, I would do it a lot longer. That can sometimes free people up to maybe leave that crappy job that might be paying them a little bit better sooner than what they were thinking. What I'm preaching is not different than what a lot of other people are preaching. I'm preaching, just more balance and more integration. I'm preaching more health. I'm preaching better relationships. I'm preaching more happiness. And the one thing that I'm adding is a financial component that addresses the elephant in the room for most people, which is how can I afford to do all these things when I've got bills to pay, I've got a family to feed. And so I share an example, a story in my book that I made up called A Tale of Two Tonys, where I showed this guy, Tony, he's 45 years old. He makes $150,000 a year, and he has $150,000 saved up for retirement. Tony meets with his financial advisor and says that he wants to retire at 65 because that's the age that everyone else picks. It's usually like the answer that people give, or they read about it in an article. And the financial advisor says you need to save $2,400 a month every single month, adjusted for inflation for the next 20 years in order to stop working at 65. So $2,400 a month is roughly $30K a year, which is about 20% of what he's making. And 20%, saving 20% of what you're bringing in is a non-starter for most people. That would mean that you're saving almost as much as you're spending. So Tony, like most people, immediately begins to feel the stress and the overwhelm. He feels like he's behind. He needs to miss more family dinners, cancel some vacations, skimp on the gym and sleep. And then I suggest this alternate reality where Tony goes home in between these two meetings with the financial advisor, and his wife says, why do you want to stop working at 65? I mean, you like the work that you do, you like the people that you do it with. And even if you weren't going to continue doing that, I can't imagine you're going to be sitting around for 30 years not doing anything, and that will make you happy. He's like, you know what, you're right. So he calls the advisor back up and he says, let's change my retirement age from 65 to 75. And the amount that Tony needs to save goes down from $2,400 a month to $110 a month. The amount he needs to save goes down by 96%. And the reason for this is, and I have Tony dying at 95 in both scenarios. In the first example, he has 10 less years of working, 10 less years of saving and allowing that money to compound, and then he needs an amount of money that's going to last for 30 years. In the second scenario, he has 10 additional years of working, 10 additional years of saving and letting that money grow, and then he only needs an amount of money that will last for 20 years. So you can just imagine the collective sigh of relief that people are feeling when I tell them, yeah, like you don't have to stress and worry about saving 20% of your income. You only have to save a couple $100 a month as long as you feel like working longer. And even if Tony were to say, I'll go till 70 instead of 75, the amount goes down by 75%. He only has to save $600 a month. So there's a lot more flexibility, and we can create a lot more time and a lot more money for ourselves right now just by saying like, hey, I want to continue doing work longer than what maybe society is telling me that I should, how long I should work, or how long I should go.
I mean, you've obviously been advising what you would consider like wealthy clients. What is like the retirement strategy that these guys are looking at that like most other people are not looking at?
Look, I would say that most of my clients have been entrepreneurs, partners at law firms, and they haven't had a big win. It's just been like a slow and steady getting like their 6, 7, 8, 9% a year and saving year in and year out. That's what's gotten it done. I will say that I've got clients now who are in their 70s, And when I started working with these clients, they were making, 150, 200 grand a year. Now they're making a couple $1 million a year. I've got clients that are in their 70s, and I've got some that have completely stopped working, and I have some that are still earning an income, not earning what they were earning in their heyday, but earning some income. And it's the ones who are still making money that are able to spend their money in a much more carefree and confident way. Like they all have plenty of money, but it's the fact that they haven't turned off the spigot. Like there's still something coming in that makes them just so much more comfortable spending what they have versus the ones who have completely shut it off. No matter how much I tell them, you can spend your money, you're going to die with a lot of money if you don't significantly ramp up with your spending. It's just hard for them to do. And so I think that like continuing to be in the game, continuing to earn some type of an income is a big unlock for not only like a wealthy strategy for saving, but also a wealthy strategy for living.
What are some of the things that your kind of older clients are doing to earn that additional income?
They're serving on boards, they are working part-time. I've got an entire chapter in my book on case studies for different ways we could approach extending our working years. It could be doing what you're doing now because you love it, except maybe having a more flexible schedule. Maybe you want to take summers off or Fridays off. Maybe you want to shut down every day at 2 o'clock. Then I've got clients who worked for big organizations or CEOs of utility companies, and now they're making 3 times what they were making in that role as a consultant, basically serving a lot of the clients and a lot of the people that they developed relationships over their careers. I've shared case studies of people who have taken 1 or 2 years off to sort of reset, recharge, reboot, refresh, think about what they want to do next, and then they come into this new era, more clear and more creative than they were prior to that. So I think, especially like now, there's not as many younger workers that are coming in to take over all of the jobs that the older workers have now. Not to mention all the jobs that AI is going to take over. But I really do feel like there's going to be a lot of flexible ways that we can all work. I think something like 40% of the workers in the US by the year 2028 are going to be freelancers, right? And so we're going to have, if we have skills and wisdom and talent, we're going to be able to set the terms for the way that we work. And if we're good at what we do, there's going to be people that allow us to do the work the way that we want to do it, as opposed to showing up in the office or being readily available on demand for them when they need us.
Is that why you started your community that you run, the Cadre Community, because you wanted to like give people a space to kind of work out how they're gonna, do some of these things as they approach like a different era in their life?
I not that wasn't why I started it. It's interesting. So I wrote a book in 2014 called Networking is Not Working. And it's funny, like I became the networking guy. I became the guy for when I was giving talks and coaching people. It was on how to develop and maintain meaningful connections. And I thought that was sort of like my calling. But in the background, I'm having these conversations with all my clients about foregoing the traditional retirement model and didn't really realize that was actually probably the thing that was going to be my calling. I started Cadre in 2011 with my wife. It's a community that we run for CEOs and entrepreneurs as a way to bring together professionals who had the ability and the desire to show up focused on how they could add value for other people. And I wanted to create a space for them to connect with people where they were safe from being, stabbed in the eye with a business card or being pitched endlessly by people. I got really good at growing my wealth management practice by hosting smaller curated events for my clients and their colleagues and their friends. And so I wanted to start Cadre for 2 reasons. One, to bring that to a broader market, but also in the wealth management space, we are somewhat limited. Especially we were very limited back then in terms of the way that we could market and promote our business. Like we couldn't write blogs, we still can't have word of mouth marketing or testimonials that we can really use. And so it was a way for for me to use my marketing chops and take advantage of like social media as a way to grow a business without compromising what I had already built up till that point.
Yeah, that's really interesting because obviously I help people make content for a living and I've worked with a lot of people in the financial space. They work for these companies like Mass Mutual and Prudential, and they're so regulated as far as like what they're allowed to say
Yeah.
online. It makes it a little bit more difficult for people in that space. So you started this community in 2011. Has it evolved into something different than like what you originally set out to be now that you've evolved and like, obviously you sold your wealth management practice. You're this author now and a thought leader when it comes to like thinking differently about retirement. So obviously you've evolved in that time, that past 14 years. How has the community evolved at the same time?
When we first started Cadre, we had one event format and we called them unnetworking lunches. And what we did is and it was all based in DC. We found restaurants that had private rooms. So we would bring together people for lunch. There would be separate checks. And I had a poster board with post-it notes and all of our members and which lunch they went to. So we did 7 lunches the first month. They would get a number of 1 to 7. Then when I would plan the lunches for the second month, I would get their availability like in a doodle poll, and then I would give them a new group of people to meet with, hopefully different mix of people at a different restaurant. We hosted 71 of these over the first year. And we thought we weren't going to do bigger events because we felt like that's where you start to potentially attract people that are in it more for what they can get out of it. They're looking to pitch themselves. They're looking to get more clients. And so a pretty big author at the time, Chris Brogan, had sent out an email. This is how long ago it was. He was writing a book about Google Plus, and he was charging $35,000 at the time for a keynote. And he had said, the first, 5 people that buy 200 copies of my book, I'll waive my speaking fee for them. And so I bought those books. He came in and gave a talk. And we actually had the head of the NFLPA, DeMar Smith, do one right before that. Bottom line is, we found a way that we could host larger events, mainly by letting our members bring guests. And then we've hosted since then some larger events where we've had Seth Godin, Gary Vaynerchuk, Lewis Howes, Sally Hogshead. We still do that to this day. I would say that the main way that we've evolved is Melanie and I, my wife and I, have very actively always asked our members what they wanted more of and what they wanted less of. And what they've always wanted more of and less of has always been in line with what we wanted to do. And I think that we would cease to exist if there was ever, if that ever got out of alignment. We're just in the process of another big reboot where we're really leaning into more business content again and really rallying around founders and CEOs and entrepreneurs, and we're having like less coaches and less, solopreneurs, if you will. And we're excited for like this next phase that we're going into.
Yo, if you are a founder and expert who really understands how important video is to grow your business, but you don't have time to mess around with cameras, write scripts, do video editing, or blow your entire budget on a fancy film crew, that's exactly what we help with at Video on Easy Mode. You are literally watching how it works in this episode right now. We make it easy to create high quality, natural video content to help you grow your business and grow your brand without leaving the comfort of your home or office. So if this sounds like something that your business can use right now, either scan the QR code or hit the link in the description. It's all remote. All you got to do is show up to a virtual studio, hang out with me for about an hour, and you're going to get a month's worth of videos. And let's get back into the interview. You mentioned that your wife is involved in that. Is this the first venture that you guys have done together? And what's the experience been like doing that?
Yeah, it is. It's been great. Like we have very complementary skill sets. I mean, she's very good at the organization of it. She's very good at, keeping the stickiness of the relationships. I'm pretty good at the big picture vision and bringing in the different speakers and thought leaders to share their ideas with us. But ultimately, when I started Cadre, I took my wealth management practice from 350 clients down to about 75, the good old 80-20 rule. I was qualifying. I was actually with Mass Mutual. I was qualifying for all these big trips, these fancy trips, and I was 10, 15 years younger than everyone else who was going. And I was like looking around, asking questions, and found that the majority of these advisors had 1,500, 2,000 clients, and they only enjoyed working with about 300 of them. And I already mentioned, like, I saw social media becoming relevant. This is kind of like in the 2009, 2010 range. And I wanted to sort of jump in and take advantage of that. And the really nice thing about all of this is that what I found is that by having two businesses going side by side, it really allows me to have the courage and the confidence to stick to my guns in terms of who's an ideal client and who do I want to serve in a way that I don't think that I would be able to if I had just one business. And so to tie this into like my book and a lot of the work that I'm doing around retirement, I think it's possible that, people can maintain maybe the job that they have now as long as it's not, just causing tons of stress and anxiety for them, and look to create something else on the side, maybe the next thing that they want to go into, where they can be more picky and more choosy about who they're working with. I think that if you stop what you're doing now and start the new thing, and you need the new thing to pay your mortgage 6 months from now, that's where maybe we start making mistakes in terms of who we accept as a client and what we sign up for and the type of work that we're doing. And by having two things going side by side, it really frees us up, I think, to only, or at least as much as possible, work with just the people that really light us up, that we feel like we can really serve the best.
I'm only like 3 years into the whole entrepreneurship thing. And when I first started, it was like, we got to get as many clients as we possibly can because we need the money, right? Now that I have a good amount of recurring revenue, I could be way more selective as to, choosing the clients that I really want to work with, that I enjoy when they sign on to Riverside to record and film with me, that I'm like, yes. So I totally get that feeling. So how did you take your client roster down from like 300 to 75? What was the strategy behind how you did that?
Yeah, so, I just I looked at the ones who were not, not holding up their end of the bargain, like they would say they would save a certain amount, or that they were not questioning the advice that I was giving them, or they were not calling, once a month to complain or ask questions. And so in some cases it was about revenue, in other cases it was just about ease of being able to work with them. We just are in the process of a revamp for Cadre right now, where we got up to about 130 members during COVID, and we had lowered our price point because most of our programming had switched to virtual. Now we're getting back to doing more in person again, but still have a strong virtual presence. And just had a lot of people that were a part of our community for different reasons. And we said, we're going to tighten it up. We're going to make it much more of a business focus now. People that are really excited about growth, excited about taking their impact to another level. And I did that by doubling the investment that we were asking of them. What I've known, and what I've seen personally in my 27 years in finance, is that money can create energy. It can create a vibration. And we had a lot of people, I think, in Cadre who were paying an amount of money, that because the price point was lower, that they could afford to be in there, but they were showing up with the pressure of feeling like they needed to get business, or they needed to make something happen. And then I also think that we had some members who the amount that they were paying was insignificant to them, and it was causing them to not lean in. It was causing them to say, well, I can just go to one thing every 2 or 3 months and get value this way. And so by us saying we're going to charge more money, we have the people that really like the vision and are really feeling like they want to lean into this next phase for their business and their life, that will happily pay it, and the people that felt like it wasn't for them would not. And so now we've got about 50 members now, down from 100 like 2 months ago. But we have 80% of them are signing up for everything that we're doing, and we really just sort of like elevated, I think, the frequency at which everyone is showing up and leaning into the community.
Very cool. How do you have those conversations with the people that you feel like are no longer committed and you want to move on from?
I had a one-on-one personal conversation with every single person, because a lot of these people are my friends. I know them well, and I wanted to make sure that if it wasn't going to be a good fit for them, then in most cases I wanted to reassure them that it wasn't going to change our relationship or affect our relationship. I think what I've seen right now is I see a lot of languishing in the world. I saw it in my community, I see it in my network. And what I mean by that is, I think a lot of us over the past 5 years have had things happen in our lives, in our careers, where we had to slow down, we had to reflect, we had to deal with trauma. We had to, my father passed away, I sold a business, my kids are getting older. I had a full blown midlife crisis. I needed a break like a lot of other people did, but I'm also now feeling this fire burning inside me again. And I'm really excited for big impact, big growth, big value contribution to the world. And I was sensing that in other people. And so, for folks that have sold their business, or for people that are still kind of dealing with things, I appreciate and respect where they're at. But somebody that is solving for peace in their life, that is a different energy than a founder that's saying, I'm looking to create the next big thing that's going to change, millions of people's lives. And so there isn't a right or a wrong here, but I wanted to reorganize the community around people that just were really feeling like they were entering a season of growth and impact and doing big things, and wanted to curate the group around those people.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So I'm going to circle it back to the big things that you're trying to do here with obviously your retirement book, right? So like this is kind of like, I guess you could almost say like a movement of what you're looking to do to create with this kind of new perspective on retirement. So like what does the success, of this movement look like 5, 10 years from now for you?
Yeah, thanks for asking. And by the way, we can definitely dig into some of the more uh, tactics, the financial tactics and strategies you had asked earlier, and we can talk about that. I have the last chapter of my book is called Investing in You, where I basically say, I hopefully I've convinced you that there's a good chance you'll be working longer than what you previously thought. And if that's the case, then you probably have more money and time right now that you can spend differently. And here's all the different ways that we can look at that. It could be, leaning into your health, be prioritizing sleep, prioritizing fitness, and relationships. I mentioned in that chapter where my wife and I have spent $250,000 on couples therapy over the past 20 years, and I don't want to know what that money would be worth if I would have invested it. But I can tell you that at 48 years old right now, I'm more in love with my wife today than I was when we got married. And I'm creating now from a place of having a really wonderful relationship with her and my kids. My kids are 15 and 13, 16. My kid turned 16 today, 16 and 13. And I've got 2.5 and 4.5 years left respectively with them being at home. There was an article about 10 years ago by Tim Urban on his blog WAPA Why, and he talks about how much time do we have left with certain people and doing certain activities, and you can calculate this based on how old you are and how many years left you think you're going to be here. And what he said is that if you have a kid, that once your kid goes off to college, if they leave town, you've already spent 93% of the time that you're going to spend with them over the course of your life. You've got 7% left. You can flip that around. And if you've got adult parents that don't live in your town and you see them twice a year and they're 75 years old, you probably can figure out how many more visits you're going to have. And so, I share this, and it is sad, and it's going to, upset, people a little bit. And what I'm trying to inspire here is that maybe you'll find ways to create more time, or at least be more present for the times that you're going to be spending together. I suggest in that chapter that I think that we're in the midst of a fun recession right now, where I don't think 99% of adults are coming close to having an appropriate amount of fun. And I think that ultimately, if we find ways to make more time to take better care of ourselves, to enjoy life more, to invest in our most important relationships, then the version of us that's showing up on the other end of that is much more qualified to make better choices on our behalf, is much more qualified to do better work and make more money. And I think ultimately the very best person for any of us to be getting advice from is the highest and most optimized version of ourselves. And I think just too many people right now are tired and anxious and stressed and have all this stuff going on that they don't see a path for pivoting away from their current job into something else, or rebooting the relationship that they have with their significant other or their kids. And one of the things I'm hoping to do is I'm hoping to let people see that because they're going to be making money longer, they can hit the pause button for a little bit. They can reinvest in themselves, and even though they might be spending less time, quote unquote, at the office or working, that the quality of their work and the quality of their output is going to be much better because their cup is so much more full.
Just listening to what you're saying, I've come to the terms that I'm going to be working until I can no longer work.
Yep.
And part of it is because one, I do enjoy it, right? So it's like, what else am I going to do, right? My kids are young right now. They're 6 and 9, but I've also been in a very different situation, where we only had one income and I lost my job. We were living in Long Island, which is like one of the most expensive places to live in the entire country. We were like really kind of bleeding money for a while. There was like a 7-year period where we didn't even take a vacation. Instead of me like trying to get a better job, I quit and I started my own thing, and I invested a lot of money, way more money than I had. Like you were saying, I invested that money in myself to learn and develop the skills that I had, learn new skills. And now I'm at a place where my business is doing pretty well. I have no money saved for retirement, like
Yep.
very little.
Yep.
But again,
That's
I'm
fine,
not
man.
even I'm not even concerned about it because I know that I'm going to continue to work.
Good.
And I'm not like foregoing experiences because I want to have them at some point later. So like we just got back from Disney World. The kids had a blast. And it's like, my kids are not going to enjoy having a blast at Disney World, 10 years from now. Like, let's
Yep.
take advantage of it now, right? I think that your whole thought process on retirement really works for somebody like myself. But I think really for anybody, if anybody can kind of, think about, hey, I don't want to sacrifice my life today so that I can do more things in the future. It's like, no, I want to be living life now. And I rebuilt my entire life around that.
Yeah, man. My kids were 9 and 7 like yesterday. I mean, it feels
Yeah,
like. And
right.
and I would say that the way that my North Star, the way that I make most decisions, it's based on whether this particular activity or action or interaction is going to increase or decrease the likelihood that my kids are going to want to spend more time with me when they're adults. That's what I think about more than anything else. And I am not independently wealthy. Like I have a nice runway that gives me the flexibility to not feel the pressure to have to work hard right now. But I am not in a position where I would like never have to work again. And for me, you know, I don't say yes to all of the speaking opportunities. I don't say yes to all of the coaching offers. I have a gym in my house, and my 16-year-old and I work out together 3 days a week. So that's an hour each time with him. My younger son plays travel soccer. We spend a lot of time in the car together, and the time that I spend with them now, it's almost like the future version of me is sponsoring this time with them. It's like I know that the future version of me is going to be bringing in more money, because when my youngest is gone, sign me up for more speaking gigs, sign me up for 50-hour weeks again, sign me up for more contribution, more impact, and more revenue. And because I know that my future self is writing is going to be bringing in some of these checks, it really frees me up to live more in the moment and really lean into these times that I have with my kids that I'm not going to be able to get back in the future.
That's exactly where I'm at. That's why I'm coaching their basketball team. I'm teaching religious education at our church. So like I'm able to do more things because I'm living in this mindset and not trying to like save like for the future and then try to sacrifice, what I'm doing now. I love the concept. It's really cool. So if you were completely starting over from like the time, you were like 25, 30 years old, right? You're just getting into it. How would you design it differently for yourself?
I think that if there's one group of people that should ignore my advice, it's probably people that are in their 20s or 30s, where I think that the majority of all of the amazing things that I have right now in my life, including the flexibility to design the life I have right now, the way that I've designed it, stems from the fact that I was working like 70, 80 hours a week in my 20s and early 30s. That is an age where, I was able to really build up my business, get a lot of experience. I mean, I was like making 500 cold calls a week for probably like 8 to 10 years. And I was going really hard. And so, I am not sure. Look, and if somebody wants to do it, then good for them, man. Like I think that would be great. But I also think that for me, and what I will be telling my kids, right, is just lean into the work, the process of developing skills and good habits and bringing in some money and building up the thing that you want to do to have the flexibility later. Because look, like when your kids were young and before you had kids, you didn't need to spend that much time with them. At least I didn't feel like I had to. But now that they're 9 and 7, you're going to find, I think, that they're going to want you to be around more. You're going to want to be around them more. And I'm really glad that I put myself in a position where I get to do this. So like when my kids were 9 and 7, we had this nighttime routine where my wife and I would take turns putting them to bed, reading them a story. We would each lay with one kid and snuggle with them and wait for them to fall asleep. And I found myself sort of wishing on a lot of nights, like, gosh, I wish she would hurry up and fall asleep so I can go watch this show or I can respond to this email. And I tried to use willpower to lean in because I'm like, he's 10, he's not going to want to keep doing this for that much longer, and I'm going to miss it when it's gone. And so I said, what if there's like a company 30 years from now that invented a time machine and they're going to allow me to go back in time to have one nighttime snuggle with the 10-year-old version of my kid? What would I be willing to pay for that? And I'm thinking how much money I'm going to have like 30 years from now. I was like, I'd write a check for $50,000 to have that opportunity. And it could be a higher number or a lower number for some people. But the idea is this is a very valuable moment. This is a $50,000 moment and I'm wishing it away. And I want to take advantage of it. And even though we're not doing the nighttime snuggles anymore, I'm getting that time in the gym. I'm getting that time in the car. We're going to concerts together and having these fun experiences together. And I think that a lot of people are having a lot of $50,000 moments happen in their lives on a regular basis that they're taking for granted. And there's always going to be a way to go back and make more money, but there's probably not going to be a company that invents a time machine that lets us go back in time to have these moments and have these experiences. And so I'm trying to create more urgency in the short term for all of us, especially parents, to really soak up all these times with our kids.
Yeah, beautiful. I love it. I think that's a great place to end right there. So tell us, Derek, where can we find you? What's the best place? Tell us about the book. Where can we get it? Give me the lowdown.
Yeah, thanks. So the book is Let's Retire Retirement: How to Enjoy Life to the Fullest Now and Later. My website's a great place to go, derekcoburn.com. It's got links for where you can buy the book. I'm still writing a lot. I've written a lot of articles to add on top of the book. I mean, I'm really in this. It feels really nice to be in a spot where I feel like I am one of the most qualified people on this planet to be having this conversation, to be sharing these ideas. And I keep leaning into it and learning more and sharing more. I don't have anything to sell right now, so I'm just looking to continue to find people that that find the message inspiring and appealing, and find ways that I can continue to add value for them. And so that's one place to go. And anybody that wants to learn more about Cadre, that's cadredc.com. But going to my personal website and signing up for my email list and getting the book would be amazing if you like some of what we talked about today.
Beautiful. Well, thank you again, Derek. I really appreciate it. I'm sure the next book's not that far away, so we'll have to get back when you do the next one and do this again. I appreciate you. Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot, Danny. Great being here with you, man.